The sun poured through the big windows of Miller's Diner like honey. Everything sparkled. The white tablecloths looked perfect. The silverware shined like little mirrors. Addison wiped down the counter and smiled. She loved how fancy the diner looked in the afternoon light. She was 23 years old and had worked at Miller's Diner for 2 years. She knew every table, every regular customer, every rule. The diner wasn't like other restaurants. It was special. Important people came here. Lawyers in dark suits. Doctors with expensive watches. Business people who talked about money while they ate. Addison felt proud when she wore her black apron and took their orders. She felt like she belonged to something important. The bell above the door rang. Ding, ding. Addison looked up from the counter. A man walked in. He was tall and had dark skin. He wore old jeans with a rip near the knee. His T-shirt looked faded, like it had been washed 100 times. His sneakers were dirty from walking. Addison's smile disappeared. The man walked slowly toward the front counter where Addison stood. He moved like he was tired but peaceful. His eyes were calm. When he reached the counter, he nodded at her politely. "Good afternoon," he said. His voice was deep and gentle. "Table for one, please." Addison crossed her arms. She looked him up and down. Something inside her chest tightened. This man didn't belong here. Not in Miller's Diner. Not dressed like that. She could feel the other customers watching. What would they think? "I'm sorry," Addison said, but her voice wasn't sorry at all. It was cold. "We're fully booked today." The man looked around the diner. His eyes moved slowly from table to table. There were at least 6 empty tables. White tablecloths waiting. Clean plates stacked and ready. "Those tables look empty," the man said quietly. He pointed to a small table by the window. Sunlight made the empty water glasses glow. Addison felt her face get hot. How dare he question her? "Those are reserved," she snapped. "All of them. Reserved for customers who called ahead." The man didn't move. He stood there, still calm, still patient. "I see several empty tables," he said again. "I'd be happy to wait if they're coming soon. Or I can sit at any open table. I'm not picky." Addison's hands gripped the edge of the counter. Why wouldn't he just leave? Other waitresses glanced over. Some customers stopped eating to watch. "Sir, I already told you. We're full. You need to leave." Her voice got louder. The man took a slow breath. "Ma'am, I'm just looking for a meal. I can pay. I'm a customer like anyone else." That was it. Those words made something snap inside Addison. Like anyone else? He wasn't like the customers here. He didn't dress right. He didn't look right. And he was arguing with her, making her look bad in front of everyone. "You're causing a disturbance," Addison said, her voice sharp as a knife. "If you don't leave right now, I'll call the police." The whole diner went quiet. Forks stopped moving. Conversations died. Everyone stared. The man's calm face showed something else for just a second. Hurt. Deep, quiet hurt. But then his face became calm again. "I'm not causing trouble," he said softly. "I'm just standing here asking for a table." That's it. Addison grabbed the phone from under the counter. Her hands shook as she dialed 911. "I'm calling right now." An older couple at table 5 whispered to each other. A businessman in a gray suit frowned and shook his head. A mother with 2 children stopped cutting their pancakes. The man didn't run. He didn't yell. He just stood there with his hands at his sides, waiting, like he'd been through this before, like he knew what came next. 911, what's your emergency?" A woman's voice came through the phone. Addison turned away from the man. "Yes, hello. I'm calling from Miller's Diner on Oak Street. There's a man here refusing to leave. He's causing a disturbance and won't listen when I tell him we're full. I need someone to come remove him from the property." "Is he threatening you?" the operator asked. Addison glanced back at the man. He stood exactly where he was, hands still at his sides. Not moving, not threatening anyone. He's refusing to leave," Addison said. "And he's making our customers uncomfortable." "Officers are on their way," the operator said. Addison hung up. She felt powerful. She felt right. She was protecting the diner, protecting the other customers, doing her job. "The police are coming," she told the man. "You should probably leave before they get here." The man shook his head slowly. "I'll wait," he said. "I haven't done anything wrong." 5 minutes felt like forever. The diner stayed quiet. Some people pretended to eat. Others watched openly. The man stood near the counter, patient as stone. Then everyone heard it. Sirens, getting louder and louder. 2 police cars pulled up outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the diner windows, painting everything in strange colors. Addison's heart pounded, but she lifted her chin. She'd done the right thing. She was sure of it. 2 police officers walked through the door. One was tall with gray hair. The other was younger with kind eyes. They looked around the quiet diner. Then they looked at the man. "We got a call about a disturbance," the gray-haired officer said. Addison rushed forward. "Yes. Thank you for coming. This man refused to leave when I told him we were fully booked. He kept arguing with me and making everyone uncomfortable." The younger officer looked at all the empty tables. Then he looked at the man. "Sir," the officer said, "can I see some identification?" The man reached slowly into his pocket. He pulled out a wallet, old leather, worn at the edges. He handed something to the officer. The gray-haired officer looked at it. His eyes went wide. He looked up at the man, then back at the ID, then at his partner. "Sir," the officer said, and his whole voice changed. "Colonel Wright?" Addison's stomach dropped like a stone into deep water. The younger officer's mouth fell open. "Colonel James Wright? From the news last month? The one who saved those people overseas." The man, the colonel, nodded once. The gray-haired officer turned to Addison. His face wasn't friendly anymore. "Ma'am, do you know who this is?" Addison couldn't speak. Her throat felt tight. Her face burned like fire. Everything was about to change, and she had no idea how to stop it. Addison's hands started shaking. Her whole body felt cold, even though the diner was warm. "Colonel Wright," she whispered. Her voice came out tiny and scared. The gray-haired officer looked at her with disappointment in his eyes. The kind of look a teacher gives when you've done something really, really wrong. "Ma'am, this is Colonel James Wright. He served our country for 25 years. He's been awarded the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and the Purple Heart. Last month, he rescued 12 people from a burning building while visiting California. It was all over the news." Addison felt like the floor was disappearing under her feet. She remembered now. She'd seen something on TV. A humble man who didn't want attention. A hero who just said he did what anyone would do, and she'd called the police on him because of his clothes, because of the color of his skin. The younger officer shook his head slowly. "With all respect, Colonel Wright, we're sorry you were treated this way. This shouldn't have happened." Colonel Wright nodded. His face was still calm, but Addison could see the sadness in his eyes now. Deep sadness like an ocean. "It's not the first time," the colonel said quietly. "Probably won't be the last." Those words hit Addison like a punch to the stomach. Not the first time. How many other people had treated him badly? How many times had he been judged by how he looked instead of who he was? By now, everyone in the diner was watching. The businessman in the gray suit stood up from his table. "This is disgraceful," he said loudly. "Colonel Wright, on behalf of the decent people here, I apologize." The mother with 2 children nodded. "You should be ashamed," she said to Addison. "Teaching our children to judge people like this." Addison wanted to disappear. She wanted to melt into the floor, but she couldn't move. She just stood there while everyone stared at her with angry, disappointed faces. The kitchen door swung open. Mr. Miller, the manager, rushed out. He was a round man with glasses and a kind face. But right now his face wasn't kind. It was serious and worried. "What's going on out here?" Mr. Miller asked. Then he saw the police officers. Then he saw Colonel Wright. His eyes went very wide. "Oh, no. Oh, no, no, no." The gray-haired officer explained everything. With each word, Mr. Miller's face got redder and redder. When the officer finished, Mr. Miller walked straight to Colonel Wright. "Sir, I cannot apologize enough. This is horrifying. This goes against everything we believe in at Miller's Diner." Colonel Wright looked at Mr. Miller. Then he looked around at all the customers who were staring. Then he looked back at Addison. "Young lady," the colonel said, and his voice was gentle but firm, "do you know what I was doing before I came here?" Addison shook her head. Tears were starting to fill her eyes. "I was visiting the graves of 6 young soldiers I served with. They died protecting this country. 3 of them were black, like me. 2 were white. 1 was Hispanic. Do you know what they all had in common?" Addison couldn't speak. She just shook her head again. They all bled the same color. They all died for the same flag. They all believe that every person deserves respect and dignity, no matter what they look like or where they come from. A tear rolled down Addison's cheek. Colonel Wright continued, "When you see someone, you don't know their story. You don't know what they've been through. You don't know if they're a teacher, a doctor, a soldier, or a hero. All you see is the outside. And sometimes, people at that outside make them forget the inside." The diner was so quiet, you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. "I wore these clothes today because they're comfortable," Colonel Wright said. "I wore them because after visiting my friends in the cemetery, I didn't feel like putting on anything fancy. I wore them because in America, I thought I had the right to dress how I want and still be treated like a human being." Mr. Miller put his hand over his mouth. Several customers wiped their eyes. Addison's tears came faster now. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry isn't enough," the businessman said from his table. "She should be fired." Other customers nodded. "You can't treat people this way," someone called out. Mr. Miller looked at Addison. She could see him thinking. Her job was over. Her life was ruined, and she deserved it. But then Mr. Miller looked at Colonel Wright. "Sir, what would you like to see happen here?" Everyone waited. The whole diner held its breath. Colonel Wright was quiet for a long moment. He looked at Addison with those deep, sad eyes. "I'd like to see her learn," he finally said. "I'd like to see her understand why what she did was wrong. Not just today, but deep in her heart. Real change doesn't come from just getting fired and moving on. Real change comes from facing what you did and choosing to be better." Mr. Miller nodded slowly. He turned to Addison. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to attend cultural sensitivity training. You'll pay for it yourself. You're going to volunteer at the Veterans Center downtown for 3 months. And you're going to write a letter to Colonel Wright explaining what you learned." Addison nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I'll do all of it." "And one more thing," Mr. Miller said. His voice was firm. "You're going to apologize. A real apology. Right here, right now, in front of everyone." Addison's legs felt weak, but she took a step toward Colonel Wright. Then another. She stood in front of him. This man she treated so terribly. "Colonel Wright," she began, and her voice cracked. "I judge you without knowing you. I saw your clothes and your skin color, and I made up a story in my head about who you were. I was wrong. Completely, horribly wrong." She took a shaky breath. "You served our country. You saved lives. You're a hero, and I treated you like you were nothing, like you didn't belong. I'm so ashamed." More tears fell. "I can't take it back. I can't undo what I did. But I promise you, I promise everyone here, that I will learn from this. I will be better. I will never, ever judge someone by how they look again." The diner was silent, except for Addison's quiet crying. Colonel Wright looked at her for a long time. Then, slowly, he reached out his hand. "Everyone deserves a chance to grow," he said. "I accept your apology. Now show me through your actions that you mean it." Addison shook his hand. His grip was strong and warm and forgiving. Mr. Miller cleared his throat. "Addison, take Colonel Wright to the best table in the house, the one by the window, and you'll serve him personally. His meal is free, and you'll give him the best service this diner has ever seen." Addison wiped her eyes. "Yes, sir." She led Colonel Wright to the table by the window, the one she'd said was reserved, the one she'd lied about. As she pulled out his chair, she noticed something. The sun was still shining through the window, but now it felt different, like it was shining on something new, something that had just been born from something terrible. A chance to change, a chance to be better. and Addison knew she couldn't waste it. Addison's hands trembled as she handed Colonel Wright the menu. The fancy paper with gold letters felt heavy, like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Can I start you off with something to drink, sir?" Her voice was quiet and humble now. So different from the cold, mean voice she'd used just 20 minutes ago. "Water would be fine. Thank you," Colonel Wright said. He opened the menu and looked at the choices calmly, as if nothing bad had happened at all. Addison hurried to get his water. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum. Everyone was still watching. The police officers stood near the door, talking quietly with Mr. Miller. The other customers whispered to each other while pretending to eat. She poured the water carefully, making sure not to spill a single drop. She added a slice of lemon, just the way the fancy customers liked it. She carried it back to Colonel Wright's table with both hands. "Here you are, sir." She set it down gently. "Thank you, Addison," the colonel said, reading her name tag. Hearing him say her name made her want to cry again. He was being kind to her. After everything she'd done, how could someone be so good? "Have you decided what you'd like to eat?" she asked. Colonel Wright looked up from the menu. "What do you recommend?" Addison blinked. He was asking her opinion, like her thoughts mattered, like she was a real person, not just someone who'd hurt him. "The pot roast is really good," she said softly, "and the apple pie is homemade. It's my favorite." "Then I'll have the pot roast," Colonel Wright said with a small smile. "And save room for that pie." "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." Addison rushed to the kitchen. She told the cook this order was the most important one of the whole day, maybe of her whole life. It had to be perfect. While she waited, she watched Colonel Wright through the kitchen window. He sat peacefully, looking out at the street. The sunshine made his face glow. He looked tired but strong, like an old tree that had survived many storms. The gray-haired police officer walked over to the colonel's table. Addison held her breath. "Sir, we want you to know we're filing a report about this incident," the officer said. "This kind of discrimination shouldn't happen. Period." Colonel Wright nodded. "I appreciate that, officer. But I hope the focus stays on education, not just punishment. That young woman in there," he pointed toward the kitchen, "she made a mistake. A big one. But I've seen soldiers make mistakes and become the best leaders. People can change if we give them the tools and the chance." The younger officer shook his head in amazement. "You're a better man than most, Colonel. I don't know if I could be so forgiving." "Forgiveness isn't about forgetting," Colonel Wright said. "It's about believing that tomorrow can be different than today. I've seen too much hate in the world. If I can plant one seed of understanding, maybe it'll grow into something beautiful." Addison heard every word through the window. Fresh tears filled her eyes, but this time they were different. They weren't tears of shame alone. They were tears of gratitude, tears of hope. The pot roast was ready. Addison arranged it on the plate like a work of art. Roasted carrots, creamy mashed potatoes, rich gravy that smelled like heaven, a piece of warm bread with butter on the side. She carried it out like she was carrying a treasure. "Your pot roast, sir," she said, setting it down carefully. Colonel Wright looked at the plate. "This looks wonderful." "Thank you, Addison." "Sir," Addison said, and then stopped. She didn't know if she should say more, but the words came out anyway. "Why are you being so nice to me? After what I did?" Colonel Wright put down his fork. He looked at her with those wise, kind eyes. "Sit down for a moment," he said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Addison glanced at Mr. Miller. The manager nodded. She sat down, her hands folded in her lap. "Addison, do you know what I learned in all my years in the military?" the colonel asked. She shook her head. "I learned that everybody is fighting a battle you can't see. Everybody has fears and worries. Everybody makes mistakes." He paused. "The question isn't whether you'll make mistakes. The question is what you'll do after you make them." He took a sip of water. "Today, you made a terrible mistake. You judged me by my clothes and my skin. That was wrong. But when the truth came out, you didn't make excuses. You didn't blame others. You owned it. That takes courage." "But I hurt you," Addison whispered. "Yes, you did," the colonel said honestly. "And that hurt is real. But I've been hurt before, and I'll probably be hurt again. That's part of living in a world that isn't perfect yet. He smiled gently. But I also believe in second chances. I believe people can grow. And I believe that sometimes the people who make the biggest mistakes can become the biggest teachers for others. Addison felt something shift inside her chest, like a door opening, like light pouring into a dark room. I won't waste this chance, she said firmly. I promise you, Colonel Wright, I'm going to take those classes. I'm going to volunteer at the Veteran Center. And I'm going to make sure I never make anyone feel the way I made you feel today. Then this whole painful experience will become something good, the colonel said. That's how we change the world, Addison. One choice at a time. One change heart at a time. The businessman in the gray suit stood up. He walked over to their table and placed a hand on Colonel Wright's shoulder. Sir, your integrity is inspiring. And Addison, he looked at her seriously, I hope you keep that promise. The world needs people who can admit they were wrong and choose to be better. One by one, other customers came over. They thanked the colonel for his service. They encouraged Addison to learn and grow. The mother with 2 children brought her kids to meet Colonel Wright. This is a real hero, she told them. Someone who serves others with kindness, even when people aren't kind to him. By the time Colonel Wright finished his meal, the whole diner felt different. The tension was gone. In its place was something warm and hopeful. Now, about that apple pie, the colonel said with a smile. Addison brought in the biggest slice. She'd warmed it and added vanilla ice cream on top, just the way she would for her favorite customer. Because that's what he was now, her favorite customer. Not because of his medals or his fame, but because he'd shown her what real strength looked like. Real forgiveness. Real grace. When Colonel Wright finished, he left money on the table for the meal, even though Mr. Miller had said it was free. For the excellent service, he said to Addison with a wink. As he stood to leave, everyone in the diner applauded. The colonel looked surprised and a little embarrassed. He waved his hand like it was nothing, but it was something. It was everything. At the door, Colonel Wright turned back to Addison one more time. Remember, young lady, judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin or the clothes on their back. A wise man said that once. It's still true today. I'll remember, Addison said, every single day for the rest of my life. The bell above the door rang as the colonel left. Ding, ding. But this time, it didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like a beginning. Addison stood there for a moment, watching him walk down the sunny street. Then she turned back to the diner, back to the customers who were watching her with new eyes, back to Mr. Miller, who nodded at her with something that might have been pride. She picked up her notepad. She smoothed her apron, and she walked to the next table with her head high, ready to serve with kindness, respect, and an open heart. The afternoon sun still poured through the windows like honey. The white tablecloth still sparkled. The silverware still shined. But Addison was different now. And different, she realized, was exactly what she needed to be. 3 months later, Addison stood in front of a group at the Veteran Center. She told them her story. The whole story. The terrible parts and the beautiful parts. She told them about the day she judged a hero by his clothes and learned the hardest lesson of her life. I can't undo what I did, she told them, her voice strong and clear now. But I can make sure it means something. I can make sure that one day of ignorance leads to a lifetime of understanding. That's my promise to Colonel Wright, to all of you, and to myself. When she finished, the veterans applauded. And there in the back of the room stood Colonel Wright himself. He'd come to see her presentation. He nodded at her, just once. But in that nod, Addison saw everything she needed to see. Forgiveness, pride, hope, and the quiet knowledge that change is always possible when someone truly wants to grow. If this story touched your heart, please like this video. Subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us we can all be better. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it today. Comment below. Have you ever judged someone too quickly? How did you learn to see people differently? Your story might inspire someone else. Remember, everyone deserves respect. Everyone has a story. Everyone can change. Judge by character, not appearance. That's how we make the world a better place, one heart at a time.